Hi everyone, welcome to GEC and TCEQ CMDP onboarding for microbial samples. So presenting today will be myself, Casey Davidson, and Victoria Zeller. I am a subject matter expert with GEC. I've been with GEC for over a year, and before that I was SIDWIS coordinator and inventory manager for the state of Indiana, and then also a compliance officer with EPA Region 5. And now, Victoria, if you'd like to introduce yourself.
Yeah, thank you so much. Hi, everyone. My name is Victoria Zeller, and I'm an environmental specialist with GEC. And before working with GEC, I spent 5 years at an environmental testing lab working with drinking water compliance for New Mexico and region 6 sampling and reporting, which is where I began using CMDP. We will have another member of GEC helping us monitor the chat for questions today, so please feel free to enter in any questions if they arise outside of where we will break and ask if you have any. So thank you.
Yeah, and also want to mention that James Staple and Garrett Heathman with TCEQ are on the call as well, so they can offer specific Texas guidance if that needs to come up. We're planning to take a break about halfway through. And I guess, yeah, like Victoria said, if you have any questions, feel free to use the side panel or raise your hand, or just go ahead and unmute yourself. So here's our agenda for today. First, Victoria will walk through EPA's Shared Chromer Services website. SCS is the identity management system for CMDP and other EPA web applications, so that's how you register. Next, we'll give an overview of CMDP itself. Victoria will walk through reporting microbial samples through the CMDP web form. Then I will walk you through reporting microbial samples through the Excel template. We'll touch a little bit on reporting directly from your LIMS system to CMDP. We will upload XML files into CMDP for submission, discuss data validations, and how to certify and submit jobs to the state. Finally, we'll give a brief overview of some resources, including EPA's CMDP Help Center and TCQ CMDP webpage, and then discuss the path to production after you graduate from the test environment. So go ahead, Victoria.
All right, thank you so much. Let me get my screen up. One moment. All right, can everybody see my screen here, the EPA SCS page?
Yes, we can see it.
Perfect. Okay, so I am going to start by logging in. So this is our EPA SCS page, and I'm going to log in here as if I am an administrator that can send registrations. All right, so to start off, I always like to make sure that I'm in the correct version since we do have a pre-production and a production environment. So welcome to the test environment. So that's where I want to be. So I will keep moving forward here. And below we have different grid views. We have program services, notifications, admin tools, and role sponsorship. So in program services, we have a breakdown of all of the organizations a user is affiliated with. And using the services link, you can add program services to begin registration with another organization, or you can expand your involvement with a different role or program. And the profile link shows your user info, your security questions, and your primary organization. The primary organization will be the organization which CMDP defaults to when you sign in, and it's noted by this little key right here. The Mail tab shows communications from SCS regarding registration and security questions. And the Submission History tab shows signatures affiliated with CMDP submissions for your chosen organization. So you would have to look them up, and then you could find what you were looking for that way. So it's basically a search page to find submission records. And in the body of the program services grid, a user can see all of their affiliated partners, program services, roles, and organizations. This handoff action button can be used to go directly to CMDP, but sometimes it can be glitchy, so I prefer to use my CMDP bookmark. That just always works really well for me. Okay, so now that we've gone over the program services grid, we'll look a little bit into admin tools. And alert publishing allows an administrator to publish new alerts and search for previously published alerts. Create a user account will allow for a user to choose a partner, program, and role to register for. So if you were to click this, you could then choose a program service and select the role that you want. In pending requests, it's a search page that lets an administrator see if there are any existing pending requests for approval. Pre-registration. This link allows for an admin to create an invite for a new user or for an existing user to add a role. And the admin can also search for pre-existing registration invites as a way to avoid duplicate pre-registration requests being sent out. And user management. This allows the admin to search for existing users in an organization. Okay, and then here in role sponsorship, a user can search for other users that have access to CMDP per partner using the access management link. Just kind of a search page. And pending sponsorship requests shows the user accounts waiting to be approved or rejected once you search for them. And then finally, in role sponsorship and invitation, a user can enter an email to send a sponsorship account request. And in the notifications grid, you'll see here any notifications that your organization administrator has set. Maybe there's maintenance being done to your site, or if they ask you to hold off on uploads or give an upload deadline. Any of those that would have been created in alert publishing by your admin would be able to be viewed here. There will also be an alerts grid if your account needs to have its password changed. The grid would look pretty similar to the notifications grid. It's smaller and off to the side, and it would be red in color. You would see that about 14 days away from your password expiration. I would recommend updating as soon as you see that alert, because you will not get a reminder email from SCS or CMDP. So that's really important to remember. Okay, so now that we've looked at this page, I am going to log out of my existing account and show what it would look like for a user with no sponsorship or pre-registration request. Okay, so I will select Register with SCS. and I would find my partner, then I would find my program, and then I would select my role. There are, after this, a couple of pages of terms and conditions. Be sure to read them thoroughly, select the check boxes, and accept. I won't go through the entire process because it involves a lot of creating security questions, but you can get an idea of what you will encounter in the process as each page is laid out here on the left side. So we're on this now, and then it would go into program ID, the terms and conditions, and then once we would get into the account profile, that's when you would put in your information and validate your email. So I think that is all I have to share on SES and the registration process for now. Does anyone have any other questions at this time? Okay. All right, well, now I can get into CMDP. I will log out and just show what it looks like right when you log in. All right, so here is our main dashboard. And the first thing that I want to look at when I'm logging into CMDP is making sure that, again, I'm logged into the correct version and environment, and that I am working in the organization I want to be working in. So we're in pre-production, there's the version, that's what I want to see. And then on this side of the page, you can see what role you are logged in for. So that's what I want to see, but this is not the organization I want to see. It makes sense that it would log into this since I did have it marked as my primary organization. But that's okay, we can go and change that. And this will be really important to pay attention to if you do have different organizations. So we go back to this side of the page, change working organization. And I will simply select down, and I will select the organization that I want to use. Okay, great. And also, once your lab submits the required amount of error-free sample jobs, you can move into the process of registering for the production account. So, so then this will look different once you have, as Casey said earlier, graduated from the pre-production environment. So on our main dashboard page, we have 4 quadrants. Lab admins can view these. We have my laboratories, change requests that have been submitted to state, work in progress, and submissions to state. I will go through these tabs here. So we have PWS profiles, and here we can view all of the water systems for an organization. And of course, it might take a little bit to load. But while that's loading, we can look at the search fields that are up here. So if you kind of have an idea of what water system you want, you can always just go ahead and type it in or look for specific system type. You can also reset your search whenever you're ready. Okay, so now that everything has loaded, we can just select one just to show where it will lead us. And so this page is going to show us really important information about a water system. So we have the basic info, contact, water system type, name, of course. This would show any other contacts they wanted listed. And it shows facility ID and sampling point information. So here we have the distribution selected. So it's showing distribution sampling points. But if we were to click to an EP facility, it would then show that info. So I will go ahead and close that out. It will probably take a second again, of course. Okay, so now I will switch to the lab tab, the laboratory profiles. And a lab will only be able to see their own information. And you can also search up here too. I will skip this drinking water sample jobs tab for now because that's where we will be in for a little bit uploading samples. So I will just show search individual samples. And this is basically just a search page to make it a little easier for you to find any samples that you know you want to look for without having to sift through all submitted jobs. You can also search by operational data. And that's that tab. So now that we've had an overview of the CMDP basics, I'm going to get into uploading samples using the CMDP web form. Before I start, are there any questions on the initial tabs of CMDP or any questions so far? No? Okay.
I don't see any questions.
All right, thank you. Okay, I'm going to go to drinking water sample jobs. And here we see that there have been a lot of jobs that have been submitted and are currently in one status or another. So it's really good to see people working in this already. Excuse me. So I am going to come down to this grid here, drinking water sample jobs, and create new job. And I'm going to select enter a group of samples. And I'm going to enter in a title. This can be anything you like. I like to use a type of sample and a date, typically. And more often than not, when we create it, it will just give you a nice blank page. So you might just have to close that out. Make sure that we're looking at the job the job that we just created. So yeah, that's me. That's one I just created. So let's try again. Okay, there we go. So now we are going to go ahead and select Add Microbial. Great. So this is the page that we are going to see quite a bit today for the web form demo. So we will want to get pretty comfortable with it. I will show these notations here. So at the top of the page, you'll see this red asterisk is required. This blue plus sign means conditionally required based on a method, typically. And the bold F is federally required, and the italicized F is federally conditionally required. Texas also does have a few fields that they require that are not noted at all by CMDP, so you will want to keep that in mind and figure out your own process for how to make sure that you're within compliance there. And the Texas fields are, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe as of now we have the sample collector name, which we can see does not have any notation. The sample location, which also doesn't have notation. Field results for microbes, collection time, and yeah. So now we will go through and enter in just a regular routine absent sample. And we'll get that out of the way. Okay, so we've selected a water system ID. The water system name populates automatically, so that's great. We'll make sure we get our facility distribution, select our routine sampling point, and I'll just call it like kitchen sink. And for the sample ID, I'll call it TCR RT-010. Collection date, I'll say I got it Monday, just to avoid any timing issues or date or time issues. And you'll notice that the lab ID and the name is already populated for us, so that's really helpful. Sample type, it also populated for us as routine. And we do need to enter in our volume here, so go ahead and enter that. And our sample collector name, which we do need to enter for Texas. Okay, great. So we have our basic information in, and now we can go ahead and enter in our results. So I just select add, and then we'll see all of these fields that we should be filling out to populate. You can either select from a drop-down, or you can also start to type it in if you kind of have an idea of what you want already. We'll keep this one absent. You can tab over. Enter in our important information. Okay, so there we have our analyte info in. And we're almost done with this sample. We just need to add our field results. So that's going to look like either your, well, you have several different options, but typically it's going to be your free or total chlorine. Okay, so I am going to actually show what it would look like if we had a federally required error. So for example, I'm going to remove this. And you will see I don't get any type of alert or error message that I might get for a different type of error. So, for example, if I try to say this, if I try and make my completed date after the start date, we would have an error and we would be forced to fix that, of course. There, and that's fixed. However, you notice when I removed this information here for the federally required field, I did not get that kind of forcing icon. So we're going to see what that looks like. So we have to save it. And it will let us save without that information, which is why the next step will be so important for all of the samples and all of the jobs that you submit. So we've saved it. It says it saved successfully. We'll go ahead and close. And now we want to go to this tab that says validations. And here is going to be a breakdown of all of your samples in your job and what samples might have any errors. So it does show that we have an error. So it will give us the micro category, sample identifier to help us narrow it down if we had, several samples. And it's a federally required, which makes sense because that's the error we introduced. And the volume assayed is the error description. So now that it told us what we need to do, we'll go back to the sample results. You can click it. Enter that in and save. I'm going to close that again. I'll go to validations, and boom, we fixed our error. So we are good to go on that sample. I'm going to go back to sample result. And now that we have just entered in a very basic routine absent, I will go ahead and show what a routine positive with a positive E. coli also looks like. And you'll probably see a lot of repetition, but it's good to get comfortable with different scenarios. Again, we see that the water system name is populated and grayed out, so you wouldn't have any discrepancies there. That's really nice. Facility, get our sampling point in there. Our sample ID can be TCR-RT-011. Our lab name is populated for us, so is our sample type. We're going to keep it routine. Okay, great. So that was pretty simple. And once you continue entering information, you'll see that it can go pretty quickly if you're going to be doing it this way. Again, we'll get to our analytes results page. And it doesn't give you a lot of room to click out before it yells at you, so you want to try and stay in those fields. Coliform. I'm going to call this present, and because the count is conditionally required on a present, so I'm going to go ahead and enter a count and a unit and a volume. Oops, that's not what I wanted. Actually, we'll change that as well. Just showing what some more errors look like again in that time. There, so we fixed that. Hopefully, it's still blue, so we'll see. And then we'll go ahead and add our E. coli. I'm also going to make this one present. So I will enter an account in units. Oh, it doesn't like that. That's okay. And typically we'll have actual results here, so you won't have to worry about that. And as you can see, now both of these results are going to be bolded in red to draw everybody's attention to the fact that they are present. Going to select this checkbox to make sure that both analytes are selected. And we'll go ahead and add our field results. Okay. Now I will go ahead and hit save. Says it was saved successfully. So great. So now we have a couple of repeats to deal with, or I'm sorry, a couple of positives to deal with, which means that we need to get into the repeats. But first, we want to make sure that we're checking our validations tab. And thankfully, I don't have any errors. So I'm going to leave that one job with those couple of samples. And I'm going to create another job with some repeats, or with one repeat, a triggered sample, a special sample, and a source sample to kind of show different scenarios that you may encounter for CMDP. Again, we'll create new job. We'll enter a group of samples. I'm going to try and remain consistent with my naming, test 2, and our date. Okay, so we didn't get a blank screen this time, so that's always nice. I will go ahead and select Add, Micro. And because we're doing a repeat, of course, we want to make sure that we have the same water system that gave us the positive. Our facility, our sampling point will be different because it's the repeat. And I'm going to have this one be the original location. I believe I said that positive was from the bathroom. I'm going to give it a sample ID to help me just remember that it's a repeat. So RP instead of RT. Okay, and our collection date. Our lab is populated for us. And so for sample type, since it populates as routine, and that's not what we want, we need to change that. So we will select our dropdown, select repeat. We'll finish these couple of fields here, and then we'll get into the new fields that it just prompted us to enter or to fill in. Okay, so repeat location, we can go ahead and select original site. And I will also add that to my sampling location. It has the water system ID, so that's correct, and the correct water system name. And this part is pretty important. So CMDP gives you a sort of drop-down list that lists all of the total coliform samples for a water system. So thankfully, this water system, we haven't tested a ton on. Otherwise, you could have a pretty long list that you have to look through, but we do have some to choose from, so it's not automatically going to know what sample you want. So you have to go and select that. So I believe it was a routine sample -011, but we did enter in total coliform and E. coli, and I only want to connect it to the total coliform sample. So I have to be careful and scroll over and make sure that I am selecting the total coliform for that sample. So there we are. Now we are connected to that positive total coliform sample for this repeat. Now I'm only going to show one sample today for the sake of time. It is required to report 3 repeat samples from the original location, upstream and downstream locations. So now that that info is in, I'm going to select Add. We're going to leave this absent, so the system fixed whatever they needed to fix. Great. And again, we click out of there and scroll down to add our field results, which are required. Okay, great. So this is going to serve as our repeat sample example. So we'll save that. It was saved successfully. I'll close it. And what do I want to do? I want to go to validations to make sure that I don't have any errors. Looks great. And I will go back to that job because I shouldn't have clicked out of there. And you will become familiar with shutting tabs and leaving them open and knowing which ones to leave as you work through CMDP. So now I'm going to enter in a triggered sample, micro, water system, and I'm going to also connect it to our positive E. coli sample. And this is going to use a different facility ID. It's going to use a TSM for triggered source monitoring sampling point. And I'm just going to call it WellTap. Give it a sample ID to help us remember what type of sample it is. So I'll say TG, TG. It gives us a lab name. Again, this is not a routine sample, so we need to select triggered. Oops. And we have our correct water system ID, our water system name, and let's get it connected to that positive E. coli. So it was TCR-RT for routine -011, but rather than our total call form analyte, we want the E. coli analyte. So here we are. And we're connected. Okay, so the microbial analysis analyze results. Select add. We are going to leave these present. I just want to make sure that I can see my times that I have already used. Okay, and for the triggered sample, I am going to also add an E. coli analyte to that. So we'll hit add. Enter in our same information. Okay, and there is the sample result info for our triggered sample. Just finish by adding our field results once again. So going to save it again, make sure we get our confirmation that we're saved successfully. Select close. And again, go to validations to make sure that we are looking good, which we are. And I'm not going to close this tab this time. I'm going to go back to sample result so that we can just keep going along. And now I'm going to add a special sample. Just from the distribution. Oh, and it looks like we don't have the sampling point there. That's okay. So we will find a water system that does. There we are. All right. And here we have SP for special. And I will just say something like, that's my code. And again, we can name our sample something to help us remember that it is the special. So I'm going to say TCRSP. And since this is not connected to our repeats or anything, we don't have to pay attention to that time. Our lab name is there for us, but we always just want to make sure that that stayed correct. So there is no special. Oh, there is a special. There we go. I apologize. But as you can see, it does not trigger any additional fields for us to enter. So we just keep going along. Okay. And once again, it's going to look very similar to everything else that we've been doing today. We'll keep it absent. Great. And add our field results. Okay, save. We've saved successfully. I will close it. And right back to validations, we want to make sure that we're not accumulating any errors throughout all of the samples that we're doing. And we want to remember not to close the job summary view and go back to sample results, since we have one more to enter, and that is going to be our source sample. So we'll add that. Our facility ID is going to look a little different than the distribution. And for source, we're going to use ASN. And I'm, again, just going to call this like tab. Sample ID to help us remember that we're working with a source sample. Just going to say SC. And collection date. We have the right lab name. So this is actually the sample type that is not available in the dropdown. So we actually just keep it as routine, and you can note in the comments if you want it to be like a special sample or anything like that. Okay, and we are just going to show adding the total coliform for this. Again, we're going to leave it absent. Oh. And I'm going to add our last field, results and measurements. Okay, great. So now I'm going to save. We're saved successfully, and I will go ahead and close this. So for this one sample job, we have, and we can look at sampling type, we have a routine, which is our source sample. We have a triggered, we have a repeat, and we have a special. So we really were able to show several different scenarios, and hopefully that is helpful for you. Okay, so now I am going to go to our job maintenance view. Oh, I'm sorry, I checked validations one more time. And thankfully, we don't have any errors for all of those samples. So now we're ready to get into reviewing the jobs. So I've entered in all of my samples, and I have 2 jobs. So you could just do one at a time if you'd like, or you could select both. For right now, we're just going to select both for fun. And the most important thing when you are starting this process is to make sure that you, haven't accidentally clicked a filter and maybe have selected someone else's job. And the easiest way for me to pay attention to this is looking for my own name and prepared by. So I did this work. I'm not messing with anybody else's job. Also looking at the description. Does this look something that I would call my samples to make sure that it's the exact samples that you were working on? So now that I've done that, and I'm pretty confident that I'm only going to be submitting the samples that we just did, I will select Send to Reviewer. And I'm going to select myself in all of these examples just for the sake of this demonstration, but you will select whoever has those capabilities and credentials. Submit. It will give you a pop-up. Excuse me. And at this point, you'll probably start to get some emails saying that that the jobs are going along through each part of the process. Okay, so now I'm going to note that now it's with reviewer in status. I'm going to select them again, and so whoever's the reviewer will do this, and then they will select Send to Certifier. Going to do the drop down, select myself again, submit. And one last time, the certifier will select Certify and Submit to State. Okay. There we go. Okay. So I will not type anything in here, and this is as far as we will go because this field is not masked, so you can see whatever you would type. So just be mindful of that if you're ever certifying around someone, because it will ask you for the answers to your security questions, and you might not want everybody to see that. So also we want to be paying attention to the fact that it says 2 selected jobs. So that makes sense to me because we selected two jobs. So when you're in this final stage, just kind of make sure that that amount is what you were expecting. So you'll answer your security question, you will select this acceptance button, and then you will submit. And I will note that even though the sample, after it's been submitted, will be done at CMDP and hopefully go on to the state. It doesn't mean exactly that the sample went through to CIDWIS. It should, but if it ever doesn't, I'm sure that Texas will let you know. And I'm going to close out here. And we are finished with the web form version of the CMDP uploading demonstration. Are there any questions right now before I hand it off to Casey?
So Victoria, we've had a bunch of questions come in that I've been answering on the side. So I just wanted to make folks aware that the questions are being answered as they come in as quickly as I can. And I'm going to apologize. I think someone has their hand raised. So I did just hopefully unmute participants. So if you all have additional questions, you should be able to unmute yourselves to ask a question. And
thank you so much, Kim. I'm sorry about not seeing the hand raised either.
I think right now it looked like Rebecca Castro may have a hand raised.
Okay.
But I don't know if they can unmute themselves.
Okay, let me unmute them. Let's see. Oh, I guess I cannot.
Well, if that isn't working, they can type questions in, and I don't know if we want to look at the questions that haven't been answered yet.
Yes, sure. Thank you. I'm going to look at those in a pop-out since that window is very little.
Yes, you have to pop it out and then I make it bigger.
Okay. And let's see.
So there's, will you be giving an example submitting a rejected sample?
I did not have one of those planned. I'm trying to think of how we can show a rejection.
Did you show how you can reject your sample?
I can. Select reject. Sure, we can do that.
So that will just reject the sample.
And we can also remove it.
Yep. So if you know you make a mistake while you're entering data via the web form and want to delete it completely, you can hit that remove button.
I also want to say that this is supposed to be for compliance samples only, because it's the compliance monitoring data portal. So since rejected samples aren't really supposed to be counted for compliance, there's no good way to send them through CMDP.
That's a good point.
And I believe Texas are having discussions and deciding how they want to handle those rejected samples if they can't be submitted through CMDP.
That's correct. Can you all hear me or no? Yes?
Yeah, we can hear you, Garrett.
Hi, this is Garrett with TCEQ, and Casey is exactly right. The rejected samples cannot come through CMDP, and so we are currently discussing, if how we want to receive those, if we're going to continue to receive those. And that, of course, has implications on replacement samples as well. So, and further guidance will be provided.
All right. And the next question, if data is sent to one reviewer, can another reviewer or submitter or administrator do the review?
Yes. You can choose who you I think so. There's a way for either that reviewer to pass it on. And like if someone's an admin, they should be able to jump in at any point because admins get the emails as well.
Then we have another question. When uploading a file, will we need to go through the steps of reviewer, certifier, etc.?
Yes.
I know that's unfortunate.
Yeah, that's just how CMDP works.
Yep. In a small lab, can the reviewer, certifier, and submitter be the same person?
Yes, absolutely.
Yep. And do you still have to push the job through those steps, even if it is the same person doing all steps? Unfortunately, yes.
Yeah, I think it would just look really similar to what we just did here, where you would be selecting yourself for each time, for each different step.
All right. So another question is, so we have to enter each sample one at a time? I think the answer is in the web form. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Thank you.
And the Excel template, which we'll show in a bit, that you can enter more than one.
All right. And then will this replace the EDD reporting? I'm thinking yes, Garrett?
Yes, it will.
All right. How are we going to practice doing this in order to get full approval to the full site?
Yeah, we'll talk a little bit later about what you will be required to submit through here. But the first step is just, getting your account set up and then practicing and submitting data. So I'll lay out the details for that later as well.
Great. Great. And it looks like, I think Ruth probably asked a couple of questions. Each day there are hundreds of samples to submit. Yes, it's going to be easier, Ruth, for you to use the Excel template that we'll show in a little bit. And yes, one person can be both lab preparer and submitter. And in that case, you may just want to be a lab administrator if you are really just one person at the lab. That would make the most sense, having the highest permissions level. Will replacement samples need to be linked to the original rejected sample? It's another rejected samples question. Who wants to answer that one?
I can speak on that. So CMDP does not accept rejected samples, and it also does not accept replacement samples. And so those are some things that we're looking at in terms of further guidance beyond submitting those via CMDP and what that would look like. But today's training or today's demo is about submitting non-rejected samples and I guess non-replacement samples too for rejected samples, that is, and just submitting routine and then repeats and specials.
Okay. Will CMDP take over steers, or will we still be able to submit through steers?
Steers is in the E2 submittal process for the microbial side. At this time, we don't have a specific date when we would put CMDP into effect and depreciate or decommission that portion of E2. Again, only talking about the microbial side of E2, not the DLQOR, so anybody who does both that's on this call. The microbial side of the E2 submissions through steers will be eventually decommissioned in lieu of this, but we do not have a date in mind for that at this time. Like it's far enough in the future. We want to give everybody time to be able to practice, get on board, get approved, and be able to submit error-free submissions through CMDP, and then eventually it would replace E2.
All right, and since it is compliance, there is no reason to do a special through this either. Is that correct? You may not need to see special samples.
There definitely is a way to submit special samples.
Yeah.
We'll get back to you on that question. Honestly, so that's the program sides and how the special results can come through. There is an option for that, and so special results for wells, for like boil water notice type samples and stuff like that could be submitted through CMDP if decided.
Okay. Someone asked, what happens if someone grabs your samples? I'm not sure why someone would grab your samples. So if you're a lab and you're entering samples, the only people who can see it are people that the lab is given permission to see those samples. I don't think anybody else could grab it unless they were at your lab. Okay, thank you, Rebecca. We already answered your question. By when do we need to be registered in this system?
Again, as far as E2 on EDD submissions, we don't have a specific date that we have lined out. Obviously, we want to get to see what the response is and how many labs, like percentage and things like that, get on board and like what that timing ends up being before we officially mark kind of like a deadline when we would decommission existing processes. But that is the expectation, is that labs would be moving to CMD submission in lieu of the existing methods, because those will be, like I said, decommissioned.
Yeah, I just want to say that our goal is to get as many labs on as soon as possible, obviously, but we want to make sure that they know how to do it and they're doing it correctly before we move away from the STEERS E2 environment.
And Ruth is asking where to get, so the template for CMDP, Casey is going to run us through that in a little bit. All right, and let's see, Rebecca is asking, she doesn't see municipal labs as a choice for registering. You might be listed as a PWS lab. That's always a possibility. Okay, can we populate the Excel file straight from our LIMS using the correct headers, etc., then submit? Casey or Victoria, do you want to answer that?
Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. It takes a little bit more work. We're going to touch on that briefly in this presentation, but we're available for more one-on-one work on that if that's something that interests your lab. So we can meet further about that.
Yep. All right. Oh, my questions just reset themselves to the beginning. Give me a moment. You guys are asking really great questions too. Can there be more than one admin? Yes, there should be more than one admin, just in case the lab admin is out or on vacation. Yeah, question for Texas. Until STEERS is decommissioned, does that mean microbial samples will need to be sent via CMDP and STEERS?
No. Once your lab has transitioned and gotten approval to submit samples through CMDP production, you would not need to do samples through both ways. As far as getting the approval, if you will, we call that a path to production. And what that is you'll need to submit 3 samples that, or 3 samples of like each different type in terms of, this is microbial, so repeats, routine, positives, TC positive, DC positive, so on and so forth. And that's outlined in our lab SOP that's on our PWSSP page. And once you have that approval, then you can begin submitting those samples through CMDP and discontinue submitting those through the existing methods.
All right. Another question. So does this mean CMDP will not keep track of compliant samples being rejected or replaced? Please clarify.
That is true.
Great. Are you saying that we would, okay, I think we answered that one already. So if we understand how to submit, we can start doing that now and no longer submit through E2. I think we would add to that we're going to ask you to practice a few times in test, right, before we let the labs go into production.
Yeah, that's correct.
All right. Okay, so Kimberly wants to know what the first step is in the process. So you would need to log in to or register for SCS tests. So that was the first website that Victoria was sending. So I'm going to see if I think I already put it and answered it in another question with a link to the SCS page. So let me go ahead and put that in here again. Still a few more coming in. All right, TCEQ has codes such as LA or BP for samples replaced. Will there be a spot for those codes? I think that's what Texas will be deciding on.
Yeah, there's no one-to-one like codes in CMDP for that, but I mean, there are other places they could go if Texas decides that is the way they want it to go.
All right, can we upload a CSV file to CMDP? Casey, do you want to answer that one?
So no, there's no CSV file, but there is the Excel template generates an XML file. So it has to be an XML file that gets uploaded.
Right. So if you are a lab that has a LIMS system and can export data to XML, you can do that as well. It just needs to be in a very specific XML schema format to be correct. And we can work with you all individually on that if you have questions. All right. Are there any other questions? Not seeing any, and I don't think I see anyone else's hands raised.
Okay, so that was a lot of information. We were planning on taking just a quick 5-minute break at this time. But hurry back because we still have a lot to show. So let's jump into the Excel template demo. The first step is to download the latest template from CMDP. So updates to the template are made periodically by EPA with new analytes and methods. So it's important to be using the most recent version. And that doesn't mean you need to re-download it every single time. It just needs to, you need to make sure that you're just using the most recent one. EPA usually sends out emails once they've updated it, so you'll know when there's updates to it. So to download it, we're at the CMDP homepage, and my organization is the lab that I'm using. And there are two templates, one for sample results and one for operational data. We will choose the sample results one and click download. So then we can open that up from where it was downloaded. And there are some settings that you'll need to do initially once you download it for the first time. It is an XLSM file, which is a macro-enabled workbook. And that means it uses macros to generate XML files. So the first step is to enable editing. If this yellow bar is preventing you from that. And then under File, Options, Trust Center settings, and then trusted locations. If this is grayed out for you, you might need to get your IT department involved, but somehow you will add a new location and it will just be where this Excel file is saved. You'll make that a trusted location, and you'll say it's good practice to trust to subfolders when you add that new location. There's another setting under macro settings, and you need to make sure that enable VBA macros, this last one, even though it's not recommended, you need to make sure that one is checked, and then also enable Excel 4.0 macros when VBA macros are enabled. If for some reason you filled out the Excel sheet and it's not generating the XML, those are the first places to check to make sure to see if that's what's preventing you from doing that. So there are 4 tabs: Microbial, Camrads, Cryptosporidium, and Notes. We will just focus on the Microbial tab for this training today, but the Notes just list changes to the template that have happened over the years from EPA. So there's this spot up top for your reporting lab ID, and that must match exactly what is in CMDP, your lab ID. And now let's enter a routine negative sample. So sample ID goes in this first column. And you can expand these if you want to. That helps you see. The water system ID, this is not a drop-down, so you need to make sure that you know or have it on hand. Same for the facility ID. Make sure you know that. And the sampling point ID. So since this is a routine, it'll be the regular sampling point of DST-CRRT. The sampling location, again, it shows not required, but it is required by Texas. So we will put in a sampling location. Say collection is the same time as the sample receive date and collection time. So here's a drop down for sample type. Select routine. Sample volume must be filled in. This is, these columns are for the repeat sample, if it was a repeat where the original sample is coming from, so we'll leave that blank for right now. There's a field for a comment if you would like to include a comment, and then a space for collector name. So this is the sample information section. So we filled in our first sample information. Cancel that. And keep scrolling to the results section. So analyte On this microbial tab is limited to the microbial analytes. It doesn't show them all, so you can either start typing or select. This is absent, so you can start typing, but it's a drop down for absent or present. We will enter the volume assayed. And the method, this shows all the methods for every single analyte, so it's a little bit of a bigger list, but you can start typing. Analysis start date and start time. And these are all optional fields. If this analyzing lab ID can be filled in, if the analyzing lab is different from the lab you're reporting, like for subcontracting. And then this third section is for the field results and measurements. So here is where you'd put for your total chlorine. Link. So to start your second sample, you would just go down to the next line. And I will enter a positive here. It is collected on the same date. And it's auto-filling, so I'm just tabbing over. This is also routine. Same person. My coliform result will say present. And we will enter our count here. Volume is required since the method will require it. Volume assayed is always required. Let's see. I'll change this to MPN. And again, that chlorine residual. So since this was present for coliform, we need to also analyze for E. coli. You do not need to repeat the sample information if it's on the same sample. So since this is a second result for the same sample, I will just start here in the results part. Say that's present, but no count. And I'll do present absence again. Okay. So here we have our 2 samples and our 3 results. And we need to upload this information before we are able to enter any repeats or triggered samples. So I will generate the XML from this. It will automatically give it a name of mysamples.xml, so I recommend changing that to something that you understand that you're uploading. So I'll say TCR routine and today's date. There's no pop-up that says it was created successfully. You just have to go and look for it. If you want to open it to take a look, it is in the format that CMDP can read. And this is also possibly how your LIMS system could output into this type of file, just to upload directly into CMDP. So now we go into CMDP, and similar to how Victoria showed, to create a new job, this time we will select Upload File, choose the file to upload. It'll say done, and then you click Upload again. It'll automatically assign a job ID and it'll say information saved successfully. And then the screen refreshes and it shows up in this top part and says validation is in progress. If you refresh the grid, it should show you now 2 records were uploaded, if any were not uploaded, and then you could click into this, and if you click further in, it'll have the sample and result information as if you entered it into the web form. And this pre-production environment is pretty slow, so I can't close out yet. Again, you would look at the validations tab. Now it shows the second part for the XML submittal validation summary. If there are any errors, it would show up here with errors. You'd click on it and it would show up down here below. But I will show that in another upload. And then you would submit and certify it in the same way that Victoria did previously. You'd send to the reviewer and follow those 3 steps. But since the routine positive is in CMDP, now we can go ahead and enter the repeats. So I will open a new Excel file. Close this. You can just have your lab name saved in here. You don't have to put it in every single time. This will be our first repeat. It's again on the distribution system, but this time the sampling point is the DSTCR-RP. Sampling location, again, we'll say this is bathroom sink. Collection date and time. If you make a mistake, it'll, pop up for an invalid entry and tell you what you need to fix. Sample type, this will choose repeat. Sample volume. Repeat location is optional, but you can choose original site, downstream, upstream, source. I'll just choose original site since it is. And here is where it needs the original sample ID information. So that original sample ID was TCP, I believe. And the original reporting lab ID is optional, but it helps in case a sample has a sample ID has been used by more than one lab. So I'll go ahead and put that in. And then the original collection date is also optional. And now we just fill in our information. We'll say this was absent for sake of ease. And enter our chlorine. Since this also has to be analyzed for E. coli, we'll put that in and say it's absent this time, even though this is not very likely. And again, this chlorine residual does not need to be repeated for the same sample, or for a different result on the same sample. Let's see. I will enter another repeat just to show you. Let me add an extra R here. So now I'm starting the second sample on the second line, since it's going to be a new sample with new results. It's another repeat. We'll say this is downstream, and you can link it to the same original positive. I am just tabbing through, or you can click through, whatever is easiest for you. And now I'm starting the E. coli result. And I think I forgot, yes, we'll put in another chlorine residual here. And let's go ahead and enter a triggered sample. So again, I'm skipping that line for the sample to start my third sample. So this will be the sampling point of TSM. And it's the well tap. Sample type will be triggered. And it still needs that original sample. Oops. I guess I messed up facility ID here. Since this is the well, it is not the distribution system. Sorry about that. So the well ID is G, and then the water system ID and A. And let's see. The chlorine. And since we're running out of time, I will probably skip the special and assessment since they're very similar to this triggered sample. You just wouldn't need the original information. But let me leave off a date here so I can show you a validation error. We'll generate this XML, save it again like we did before. And then I will create a new job uploading that file. So the more samples there are, the longer it will take to upload. Or it's possible there's an issue with my, nope. Yeah, with errors. So here it says I have 3 samples and 3 have errors. So it's a critical validation error and it says invalid original sample ID. So let me double check my original sample ID. I'll go back to that job in CMDP and look at the positive. It looks like I have a 0 instead of a dash. So I will just wait until I can copy the sample ID to make sure I have it correct. I'm going to correct it here. And I will go ahead and put this date back in since I got a different validation error. Regenerate the XML. And you can save it in the same file name, but it does need to be deleted from CMDP after you before you re-upload with the corrections. So I will go ahead and remove this job and re-upload the corrected XML file. And hopefully that is better. Yes, so now it shows 3 total records and 3 were uploaded. I can see the 3 samples here. And if I go to my validations tab, it shows 3 without errors. So I am good to submit that and go through the submission process as before. There is also, before you submit a job, you can upload a document like a chain of custody or something. It's not required, but you can. I'm not sure how often Texas will be checking that, but it is a possibility if you need to add an attachment to a job. And then so are there any questions on that Excel template before I move on to other reporting forms?
Yeah, so I've been answering some questions, Casey, that have come in writing. And I want to ask a few of these because I want to make sure that everyone hears it. So some folks are asking if they need to report the E. coli result only if total coliform is present. But I'm going to ask someone from TCEQ if they have a specific preference there.
I'll verify that with our compliance team. They're not on this webinar right now. It's myself, Garrett, and James, and we're part of our data support group. trying to get all this implemented in terms of from the data side and those understandings. So we can ask those questions to the compliance program just to confirm.
Okay. All right. And let's see. There are some questions, it looks like, about timing of reporting the data. So one question is, if repeats aren't able to be entered until after the original data is entered, are we unable to submit all samples at end of the month by 10th following? And is this a daily or weekly upload?
So to answer exactly on that, get back to that, but basically, y'all can, all water systems or labs, sorry, can report data. Sorry, 1 second. All labs can report data at any time, essentially, and then we will have CMDP will be running downloads on a frequency, and then those will be imported into our SIDWIS for compliance officers to be able to review and do compliance on. So we're not really at least right now from a data perspective, there's not a requirement to do daily or weekly or what have you. It would be just to submit the samples in accordance with whatever the regulatory requirements are. James, did you have something to add?
No, I'm good. You covered everything.
Okay.
Mark Wade with Metro Health. I need to obtain the XML schema to start working on a LIMS extraction. The last version cost me $10,000, so I'm thinking this is probably going to be about 12 or 14. I'm not sure, but I need to get my hands on that as soon as possible. We're going to have to budget for it. We're going to have to get IT working on that situation. I don't think we can survive trying to manually type our operations into the spreadsheet. So how can we get our hands on that?
I will show that in just a few minutes.
And I put as an answer, I'm hoping that you all should be able to see answers to questions. So if you need stuff after this webinar, you can email us at support@gec.com. And I would recommend putting Texas CMDP in the subject line of your email. And that goes to our ticketing system. And then it'll be assigned to basically me, Casey, and Victoria. And we will answer your questions to get you information that you all need and help. Because I know a few of you also are not sure, you're not finding your lab in SCS. So we need to help you figure that out too. So send an email and we will get on it probably starting later on today. And I think someone wants to know about the error messages. It's just saying what the error is, but does it tell which row is the error?
Yes, it did show, I believe, since I don't have it anymore. Let me use an old one.
You can go back and open the one that had 5 errors from me.
Okay.
Well,
Or this one. Yeah, so this is the sample identifier. It tells you which sample has the issue, and then what the error is. It's not super helpful, but let's see. It does give you a little bit of information, especially if they have different PWS IDs or different sampling points, different dates, which is more likely than having a ton of samples from one.
I guess to answer the question, it doesn't specifically identify the row, but it does give you, what sample it is. And so if you have, for example, this one was like 20 something samples or results per sample. And so you know exactly which sample errored out. And then the error description will tell you what exactly was wrong with that. And so you can see some where it's an invalid facility sampling point ID. And so if the facility sampling point ID is not something that is, assigned to that system, that will be reflected in CMDP, same as it is in CIDWIS. And so if you try to submit a sample for something that doesn't exist or isn't approved, then there's going to be error messages.
All right, any other questions?
Okay, so just touching quickly on the LIMS to CMDP, you can either configure your LIMS to generate the Excel document and then from the Excel generate the XML like we talked about, or use LIMS to generate that XML file and directly upload it into CMDP. That's something that you would need to discuss with your LIMS and IT people. And then like Kim mentioned, you can email us and we'd be happy to provide one-on-one assistance. So moving on to the CMDP Help Center, this is EPA's, ServiceNow website that they use to provide help. You'll want to click on this Compliance Monitoring Data Portal module. A lot of this is for primacy agencies, but there is some helpful information for lab users. This Launch CMDP button will take you directly to CMDP. If for some reason you lose the link or you're already there, you can just go directly to CMDP. There's this password reset information, but that's really only if you're locked out of SCS and aren't able to change your password in there. If you click FAQ, that links to all the CMDP help desk articles, just like everything, production release notes. One that may be more helpful to you, though, is this lab's water system info. It filters the FAQ into 4 laboratories and water systems, and there's less results. So that's just some helpful documentation. If you click into this, the article will either be here or as an attachment here. And then if you are interested in LIMS, there's this Laboratory Information Management System button. And this is where you'll find that more technical documentation. So these 3 documents would be what you're most interested in. There's the Inventory and Lab Data Dictionary and the XML schema definitions that would help with mapping LIMS to CMDP. Texas also has their own webpage with helpful CMDP information. You can click CMDP to get to that section. They have some links to the EPA websites, some guidance documents, and they will be uploading more guidance documents soon. So keep an eye on that for help there. You can also register for future demos, and then also their email address is there, view their general inbox. So let me put the slide back up. So the path to production, we definitely encourage you to create your account in SES as soon as possible to get access to CMDP. You can start submitting test data right away. It can be completely made up sample results, or you can use current data, but just it's important to understand that what you submit is not for compliance in the pre-production environment. So it doesn't take place of your current reporting requirements at this time. TCEQ asks that you make at least 3 error-free data submissions before you move to CMDP in production. So that is just for micro. If you analyze more samples, there will be more submission requirements. So just at least 3 micro submissions. They would like to see total coliform negative, total coliform positive, E. coli positive, triggered repeat samples, just a bunch of different scenarios to show that you are comfortable submitting those and that you are able to do it without any errors. So you're welcome to practice as much as you like, but for graduation purposes, it's the 3 samples or the 3 submissions.